Now we're live.
No, that's live.
I know, that's
that one's recording for YouTube. Hello, everyone. It's Hump Day. I've got my wine, and Brandon has mead that I got for him from Idaho. So that's fun. I have to quickly just adjust this real quick. There. So, hi. So today for this Hump Day, we're discussing consensual non-consent. Mm-hmm. How would you define consensual non-consent?
It's either a type of role play where you're pretending that you don't want something that you do. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like rape play that involves sex that you want to be having. Yeah. But you're pretending that you don't, and, you know, crying out that you don't want it, or pushing your partner away, or whatever. Or it's agreeing to something that you might not want, but you want to do it with that. You want to let that person do it to you, kind of thing. So,
right.
Yeah. Complicated.
Consensual non-consent can be super complicated. So, I'm happy that you mentioned that both of what it is edge play. Edge play is defined as play that is higher risk to physical or emotional harm.
Usually emotional.
Well, it could be both.
I know, but I mean, all play is potentially dangerous.
Most people don't consider... some forms of play are a little more elevated risk.
True, but
I mean, it's more elevated risk to do knives or needles or breath play than it is to do, like, spanking. Right?
True, but you wouldn't consider all needle scenes edge play. You wouldn't consider all rope scenes edge play, but someone could get...
It's pretty
people
fuzzy.
Have died doing rope play.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You wouldn't consider vac beds edge play, but lots of people have died in vac beds. Yeah. So, like, it's not about physical risk. Usually, edge play is usually about emotional danger.
Dictionary definition defines edge play as play that has higher risk physically and emotionally. That's what I'm going for. I see your point.
Anytime that you bring up the dictionary definition of something in an argument about what something means, it means you're losing the argument.
I don't think that's the case. I really don't.
Not anytime.
I really don't think that's
anytime,
the case.
But I mean, not anytime, okay. But, like, if you...
I don't think he's had enough sleep today. No, but I do love you. I know I'm teasing you.
But, like, if you're debating what something means, and you both know the dictionary definition of a word, trying to bring it up as the basis of your argument is kind of pointless.
Okay, so what's your point about edge play?
What do you mean?
That it's mostly physical, or that's mostly emotional risk?
Yeah, that's what makes it edge play. I mean, almost all BDSM play would be edge play if you were just going by if it's physically dangerous, because everything's more dangerous. Everything's more dangerous than sex, than like
living
straight vanilla sex, or yeah.
Everything has a risk, but I feel like a lot of
my argument. That's.
Anyways, we're supposed to be talking about consensual non-consent, and now we're getting like.
Into a semantic argument.
But it's an important argument as we do.
It's an important semantic argument because we're trying to define what we're talking about.
Consensual non-consent.
Yes.
Which is edge play.
It's a type of edge play, yes.
A type of edge play. Okay. For those of you that don't know us, as we get into like our like silly semantic argument, that's honestly most of the arguments we have are over semantics.
Yeah.
You'd agree with that. Anyways, my name is Robin. Some people know me as Red Robin, or Sex with Robin, Sex with Red Robin. And I am a sex educator / sex and relationship coach. I teach a lot of stuff on not just sex, but like relationships, polyamory, kink, LGBTQIA2S plus kind of issues. And this is Brandon. He is my co-parent, and my husband. Get it? Because he's my beard.
Yeah, you're very
clever.
And
he has a beard. You came up with husband. Thank you very much.
I know, but you bring it up a lot.
I do, because it's so perfect. We're co-parents / roommates / best friends. He has even more kink experience than I do, even more polyamorous experience than I do.
I'm just not nerdy the way you are.
He's not as nerdy as I am.
I'm nerdy, just not the same way.
Not the same way. And also, you're a lot more introverted. If you sit down with him and engage him in conversation about this stuff, he will happily talk for a long time about it. Mm-hmm. But he's not like me where I'm like shouting at the mountaintops and trying to help in that sense, because he's far more introverted than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Yes. Yes, I did. I did agree.
Yes, and you still do. So, consensual non-consent. What you mentioned in terms of your definitions was also, I feel like, strongly sexually linked, which I think is a good thing. But I also wanted to talk about the non-sexual forms. We both have kids. We share kids together. We have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Why are you giggling?
We both have kids.
We both
that makes
have
it
kids.
sound
That's
like we
what,
have separately.
I know. That's why I was like. That's why
we have kids together.
That's why I corrected myself. We have kids together. We have kids together. We raise them together. All's good. But so we get to talk a lot about this kind of stuff. And recently, we've always been good about consent. And studies show that if you don't allow your kids, don't force your kids to like hug or kiss random relatives or friends when they're not comfortable, they're more likely to be assaulted in some form because they've been taught you have to push through this uncomfortable feeling to allow for this other person who has entitlement to physical contact to do what they want. So a lot more of our generation and younger are starting to teach their kids not to force hugs or kisses, but to say, like, do you want to hug or kiss that person? It's up to you. And if they don't want to, they don't have to. Even with us, sometimes they don't want to hug or kiss us, and we respect that.
Yeah.
And also things like with tickling. If they at any point...
Tickling's a big one. A lot of people have like a lot of triggers around tickling because they got held down and tickled. And
same. I experienced
really,
that. I don't like being tickled.
A lot of people have really traumatic experiences with tickling, and we didn't want to do that with our kids, so we've been very conscious, and it's been a very, really explicit way for them to work with giving consent, because as soon as they say no, we stop, and we check in with them, and if they want to keep going, we can start tickling again and stuff like that. But we always stop when they say no. But recently...
Well, and have you noticed, like, for a while, especially Calvin would say, go, stop, go, stop. And that would be a game where we'd tickle when he said go, and then we'd stop.
Yeah, it's a good game.
It's a fun game because it shows that you can take back consent or give it at any time. Mm-hmm. Recently, and this has been kind of a fun thing. Do you want to say it, or do you want me to say it?
No, go ahead.
Recently... it was Calvin, of course, because he loves being chased and tickled, and he loves saying no. And then you stop, and he's like, no, I want you to tickle me. So lately, like last week or so, when we're tickling or chasing him, he'll say no. And then I go, okay, I'll stop. And he goes, I mean no for play. And so and I'm like, excuse me? He's like, well, there's no for real, and there's no for play. So it's become, with both of the kids now, when chasing or tickling, and they say, no, stop. I go, stop for real or stop for play? And they'll be like, stop for play. And then they're ready to be tickled again. And there have been times when they're like, no, I mean stop for real. And I'm like, thank you for saying that, and I stop. So, and have you been doing that a lot lately, or have they been communicating that with you? That's been my experience with them lately.
I think that's more of a game that they've been playing with you. I don't...
I'm more of a chaser and a tickler.
Yeah, I more just throw them and stuff. Just doing that with Calvin.
There's like a good example of polyamory in terms of like the different relationships you have with your kids. I definitely have like a lot of physical humor with my kids. Like I do a lot of chasing and making faces and tickling.
Yeah.
You're more of like the playground that they enjoy climbing on.
Or being thrown from.
Or they're like being thrown around by you. But anyways, that's a lot of what I've been doing. As soon as they say stop or no, I go, stop for real or stop for play? And they'll tell me. So that kind of has been really fascinating for me, and it's made me say, like, this is something I want to talk about now. Because it's a form of consensual non-consent. My kids are wanting to say no, or they just say it, but they don't mean it. Yep. Which I feel like a lot of people in their life have been in that situation where it just blurts out of your mouth where you say no or stop, but you actually want them to continue.
Or ow before something actually happens.
Or ow before something actually happens.
Yeah.
Or if there's a loud noise,
Yeah.
I'll be like, ow! It's just like an instinct. And I know he hears that from me all the time. When I was like, bang, ow! And he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I actually didn't hurt. Something just banged something and I said, ow.
Yeah.
That's a good example, or a good
Special girl.
example of being in a situation where you just blurt something out and they're like, wait, no, I didn't mean it. Have you ever been in that situation where you say no or stop, but you really didn't mean it?
Me, no.
You? No?
No, I'm usually pretty good about clear communication. And
Can you speak up, please?
I'm usually really good about clear communication and saying what I mean.
Maybe that's your internal processor where you
Yeah.
choose your words very carefully.
I think about it and then I speak instead of speaking and then think about it. So I don't usually say no.
That's
stop.
true. That's very much an internal processor thing.
I don't
Well,
usually say no
you have
stop.
experience bottoming,
Yes.
and I've talked to you before. I have seen you not want to do things, but also want to do them.
That's not the same as saying no stop.
No, but it's definitely when you're like, ugh, really? Do I have to? If
Yeah.
you don't want me bringing up specifics. And I felt bad a little bit because I could see, it felt like he really didn't want to do it, but I made him do it. And then later he was like, that was awesome. So kind of being forced to do something that you don't want to do, but you're consenting to it. That's consensual
Yeah.
non-consent. Right?
Yes.
Saying that you didn't, or giving the impression that you didn't want to do something, but you kind of did. That's complicated
Well-
as fuck.
Yeah, it's complicated because I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you and I also, you're shaking your head because I'm like,
You're gonna get messages asking
I'm
what it
beaming.
was.
It's up to you whether I tell the story or not. It's
Well,
up to
not
you.
on
It's
video.
not on video.
No.
If somebody asks, I'll be like, hey, this person asked. Can I tell them?
Mm-hmm.
Now people are going to message me. And we've also played, like, switching the role reversal. The only thing I can really think of where we did consensual non-consent was you would hold me really, really tight in, like, a position where I couldn't move. And you'd be like, struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd try to struggle and get away just to kind of realize how helpless I actually was in this situation, which escalated things.
Yeah.
That's a form of consensual non-consent, where, like, I was struggling to get away, but I was consenting to it.
Yeah. Or like, one of my favorite ones is like, at the end when you're done and you would rather be stopping, but you want to continue so that I can finish as well.
I
Yeah.
love that.
That's one of my favorites.
Usually, yeah, when I actually don't really want to do it anymore.
Because I mean, like, the consent is
but
still
I kinda
there.
do.
The consent is still there. Like, you're not revoking consent or anything. It's not really consensual non-consent, but you would really rather not be doing that anymore.
But I would choose to do it to
Yeah.
please you.
Yeah. So, it's kind of...
That's so
There's
much
a lot
fun.
of there's
So
a lot of
much fun.
There's a lot of gray area with consensual non-consent
Right?
stuff.
What are your thoughts on blanket consent? If anyone's heard of blanket consent, when someone says you have blanket consent, that means you can literally do anything. They're giving you consent to do anything.
Outside of what they've negotiated. Like,
And like anything. If someone says.
No,
Well, like what
like
if someone
you
says
you don't just say you have blanket consent. You have blanket consent besides these few things. Nobody's
right.
Nobody's giving blanket consent and saying, sure, mutilate me. Like, that's not like
yeah, like blanket consent apart from like death, mutilation. The most amount of consent I had from a partner said to me, "You don't kill me, don't mutilate me, and no clowns." Apart from that, blanket consent,
yeah,
which is a lot.
which is a lot, but it also
It's dangerous words. So yeah, how do you feel about blanket consent?
it's not something to do right away with a person. Like, you should have an established relationship, and you should understand, as the top and the bottom, what, like, you should already have a good indication of what they want and what they're going to get up to, right? Like, if you give someone blanket consent, you should have an idea for what they might want to do to you before you give that blanket consent. Like, you wouldn't give blanket consent to a new relationship or
like a pickup situation. You're not going to be like, hey, blanket consent.
No.
That's a bad idea.
No, that's more of a long-term relationship
Long-term
kind of
relationship.
situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, it can also
Even then.
But it can also be exhilarating and challenging and rewarding and really fun because, like, there's a lot of stuff with, like, for example, humiliation play, where it's like humiliation play is all stuff that you don't want to do, but you kind of maybe want someone to make you do. And you don't want to, like, have to go through everything that you want to try and specifically agree to it because, I don't know, it's harder that way.
And I know to some people that have maybe never heard of this kind of play, they're kind of like, that sounds really messed up. To some people, they think, what? Here, I'm going to give you like a real world, mainstream muggle form of what this is. I know it's true. I used to remember... Like when we met, muggle form, yeah. When I used to see a personal trainer. You know where I'm going with this. I used to see a personal trainer, and I remember seeing a new personal trainer, and I sat down with him, and he was like, "What are your fitness goals?" And I was like, "I don't actually have any fitness goals. I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm not trying to whatever. Honestly, I just really love being brought to the point where I don't want to work out anymore, and then being pushed past that." Because when I work out by myself, I'm like, I'm tired, I'm done now, bye. And I love being pushed beyond being done because it's like a way to show myself that I'm capable of more than I think. Which is really funny because it's very like, it sounds really kinky and it kind of is. I feel like personal trainers are like pro-doms in a way. In a lot of ways. Yeah, they're like paid tops. But seriously.
Yeah, fitness top.
A fitness top, because I love to be just being pushed, and that's really common. Is there any way you can read that comment? I can lean in to read it, but you have much better vision than I do.
No.
I'm gonna have to lean in to read this comment. I know this about CNC, which is a form of consensual non-consent, or that's what the acronym for it is. But can you give a quick description of humiliation play in the context of CNC?
Sure. So humiliation play is basically being made to do things that humiliate you or embarrass you. There's lots and lots of examples. I don't know how graphic some of them
Yeah,
can be.
we can get pretty graphic.
I mean, a lot, like, it's just anything that you can think of that you wouldn't necessarily want to do that someone could make you do. But humiliation play is doing that with someone that gets turned on by being made to do these things. So,
or to be humiliated. Like, it doesn't have to be made to do something. And I'll give an example.
That's true.
That isn't too graphic. And I love doing this with, of course, having talked about this with a person. If I start to smell that they're getting aroused, and just to be like, I can smell you.
Yeah, that's a little embarrassing.
It's
that's
embarrassing and it can be but that's what pre-negotiation is for.
Okay.
Because some people find that really embarrassing. Some people so much so that they don't want to play with that. But some that are like, I get so embarrassed when you talk about my smell, about being turned on, about being sexualized, and that's really humiliating for them. And I love playing with that. I mean, like, you're such a slut. I can smell
like
you. It's so much fun.
Yeah, or like I know someone that has that they like to gag the person with like a ring gag or something like that, so their mouth stays open, and then they have citric acid, like the powdered citric acid. They just touch a little bit to their tongue, and you drool like crazy. If you're like embarrassed by drool or anything like that, that can make you drool like crazy. So that's kind of like humiliation play, right? Consensual non-consent is basically just not explicitly necessarily negotiating that and just being okay with, like, you, how do I put this? You just basically consent to doing humiliation play, and the person would do something that humiliates you. That's like,
I'm not going to use names, but I saw a humiliation workshop where there was a demo, and the presenter made the demo bottom do something, that they really didn't want to do. And they were like, please, master, don't make me. But then they did it because their master asked them to. And then afterwards, they were really happy that they did it. So it was like they were agreeing to do it. Obviously, if they wanted to stop, they could have, but also they didn't really want to do it.
Well, in that specific relationship, they really couldn't have said no very well.
Help me out here.
Okay. Never mind.
Okay, I hope that helps. Please keep typing if we didn't answer your question or if you want more clarification. And I'm just going to lean forward and read all my cleavage. Thinking of a personal trainer as a fitness top makes me want one. Okay. Oh, and the other person said, I got you. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay. I'm going to continue on the story with the trainer because it gets better.
It's pretty funny.
It's pretty good. Okay, so I get this trainer and we're just sitting down. That's when he was like, what are your fitness goals? And I was like, no, I just want to be pushed past what I want to do. I want to say, I want to stop, and I want you to say, no, you're going to do more. That was what I wanted. I wanted a consensual, non-consent play with my with my personal trainer. And he said, and you'll catch so many like similarities to the kink world. He said, we're just getting to know each other. I want to get to know your body and how you respond to things. So for the first couple sessions, I'm going to be checking in on you a lot. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh my God, this sounds like the first couple times you play with somebody. Yeah. And so during our first couple sessions, I kept saying, he'd be like, how does this feel? And I would say, oh, it feels so good. And it was like, it was hurting, because I was being pushed, but that was the only thing I could say. I said, it felt good. And he thought, well, if it feels good, I'm not pushing her hard enough. So he'd push me harder. And then he'd be like, how does this feel? And I'd be like, it feels so good. After the first couple of sessions.
It took like 3 sessions.
It was like the third session when he's like, how does this feel? And I'm like, it feels so good. And he leant in and he was like, so when you say it feels good, what does that mean? And I said, well, I mean, it hurts. And he said, and that feels good. And I said, yes. And he was like,
well, okay then.
Okay. And then afterwards, he'd be like, how does this feel? And I'm like, it feels good. And he'd be like, oh, this hurts, doesn't it? I was like, you're such a top.
Yeah.
God, he was a great trainer. Oh my God. But yeah, some trainers are legit just paid tops. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
That's good for you. Yeah. So.
Fitness tops.
Fitness tops are a thing for sure.
Go get one.
Go get one. So.
They're great. We're
almost at 8 o'clock already, honestly. This has gone by pretty fast.
Super fast. I don't know if we've been on topic most of the time, but that's beside the point.
Well, if anyone has questions about consensual non-consent, please throw them at us. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Hot damn that story. Little fire emoji. Thanks for sharing. You're welcome. That's always a good time. And someone said, I want his number. That was years ago. I don't even know if he's still around, but I'll check. He was really good. Anyways, consensual non-consent. We've basically touched on, okay, so navigating that. Mm-hmm. Let's talk should we talk? Yeah, let's talk sexual. Well, I was trying to say if we should talk sexual or non before. Let's talk sexual, kinky, kind of consensual, non-consent. How do you negotiate for that?
Carefully. You really need to specify, like, if you want to do consensual non-consent, you really, especially the first few times that you do this with a person, you really need to specify what is okay and what isn't, and where the boundaries are, and kind of what you expect. And I mean, if you don't want to get into details about exactly what's going to happen, then maybe like talking about how you want to feel and yeah. How you want to feel. The intent. What is it you want to get out of it? Do you want to feel scared? Do you want to feel powerful? Do you want to feel powerless? Do you want to feel pain? Do you want to feel humiliation? You want to feel forced.
Do you want to feel forced?
Mm-hmm.
I really
overpowered.
love talking about intent. What is it you want to get out of this? How do you want to feel?
It's a really good way to, if you don't want to specifically hash out the exact details of a scene, which, I mean, nobody really necessarily does, especially because as soon as you start the scene, it's not going to go exactly the way you planned it. It's like,
right, yeah.
It's like planning a skirmish, right? Like every good general will tell you that you make a plan and it goes to hell right as soon as you start, right?
It's not if things go wrong, it's when things go wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, scenes are the same way. I mean, you can have a general idea for it and a plan for it, but generally speaking, they're not going to go, like, exactly word for word how you planned it if you write it out as a story, right? Because that's not how life works, and you're dealing with another person, and everybody's different day to day. So, hey, I mean, do what you can to try and make it very clear what you're looking for, both of you, so that you can try and find the space where those desires overlap and you can play in there. And if you play again afterwards, you can maybe expand that a little bit and find more space to give each other room to try and experience new things. But you want to be very careful when you start playing with this. This is one of the more edgy types of edge play because you're specifically dealing with consent, and any breach of consent can really, really hurt someone.
Long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see more stuff.
Yep.
Someone said I'm taking notes. Do it. I get angry during CNC scenes as part of a fight or flight response as a bottom, but I'm still in the green zone. Any thoughts on processing through the anger so the scene doesn't have to stop? And then they kind of corrected, sometimes I get angry, not always.
Okay. Well, it depends on what that looks like for you and what you need to do to process it. You could just be restrained and the person could just keep doing stuff anyways. Or you could take a break. Or you could work into the scene somehow that you're maybe restrained and then left for a few minutes to process, and then the person comes back to you. Like maybe they fake that they need to go get something from the other room or something, just to give you a few moments to recuperate after the beginning of the scene, or whatever's made you mad. Maybe they need to go get a new toy that they left in the other room, just to give you a couple minutes so that you don't have to break the continuity of the scene. You don't have to break the, what's it called when you're like into
The illusion?
a movie? No, when you're like in the suspension of disbelief, basically.
The illusion.
Yeah.
You don't want to break the illusion of the scene.
Yeah, you don't want to. Your suspension of disbelief doesn't want to get broken. So what you want to do is just try and work that into the scene, maybe.
Okay, I've got another suggestion as well, because again, like, everyone's different, and I
sure.
think you'll like hearing this too. Again, this might not be the proper thing for you. This is what's worked for me, both as a top and as a bottom. Because I like to bottom. I love pain. I am not submissive. I don't have a submissive fucking bone in my body unless I'm with River. Shh, don't tell River I said that. So there have been times, actually, no, it was when I was with another partner who topped me. Again, not really dominant, but definitely topped me. And I struggle being dominated because, like I said, I'm not submissive. So I'd be trying to fight back and trying to fight back and trying to fight back and getting really angry and getting really upset, getting really growly, not really taking what I was supposed to get until they just pushed me over the edge. And I was like, ugh, and just broke. And I've done that as a top too, where like a bottom has kind of challenged me, and I just keep stepping up the alpha, getting in their face, getting really intense, getting really growly, kind of being like, no, I'm the fucking boss right now. And there's like something about being the alpha that has made other bottoms, when they're trying to fight back and actually getting angry, to be like, and they kind of retreat, right?
A good thing to do there is, like, if they growl at you, you growl back at them harder,
Yeah,
and like a
that's
more,
what I do.
or like bite them and growl if they bite at you, to like show that you have the power in that situation.
Basically, play
It
the
can
alpha, really grab them hard and growl, get right in their face, look at them dead in the eyes, hard. And then they've kind of backed off and been like, okay, because that's how the whole alpha thing works. But I don't think everyone would respond to that very well.
And I mean, it depends on the
But
person.
it depends on the person, it depends on the situation. But that's always been my response when a bottom gets really feisty. And I love feisty bottoms because I love overpowering them.
So there's basically two ways to do that. Either give you space to process the anger and come back to the scene, or push through it.
Yeah.
And those are both totally valid, different approaches. And you might find that you want one at one point and one at a different point. It could be, it's just what you want to do.
I hope that helps. I got more comments. CNC sounds like it asks a lot out of tops.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. It totally does. Someone said,
Sometimes.
oh shit, someone said I'm going to tell River. I'm in trouble.
Sit.
Okay, and then one more. Thank you. That's good advice. Fuck the alpha growl. You're welcome.
Yeah.
A CNC takes a lot out of tops. There's a lot of risk. Tops take a lot of fucking risk doing consensual non-consent.
For sure, yeah. I always like to try and get a lot of, I like to communicate a lot, and especially, maybe over text or with messages, so that if something goes wrong, I have written proof that the person, we did, this 2-month negotiation of all the things that were going to happen, and, these are the 7 times that I checked in with them that they wanted to do this. We made the date, they showed up, we did the thing, now they're upset. And, I mean, it's okay if you're upset after the scene. And absolutely, communicate with me or get whatever aftercare that you need or anything like that. But, going... There are some people that, in their anger and grief, will go to the community or maybe even report you to the police. So it's very important to do what you can to protect yourself from those kinds of things if you are a top. On top of that, there's also the planning and the emotional labor and all of the other stuff that goes into those things, because consensual non-consent, you don't, as the bottom, you don't want to be part of the planning process. That's half of the thing about consensual non-consent, is you want to be forced to do something that that you're not consenting to. You don't want to plan it. You want to be forced. So
yeah. I have 2 things to say to that, to add to that. Don't lose my train of thought. I had it. Shit. No, don't. I had it. Shit, it was in my head. I had it. Give me a second. I got it.
Can I try and give you cues to what I said?
Sure. I was trying to grab it and I lost it.
Okay. I was talking about negotiating and getting... Okay, are you good?
I got it. Thank you. When negotiating any kind of play, whether it's consensual, non-consent or not, I always say this. I say, if something goes wrong, whether that's in the moment or even however many days later that you decide something wasn't okay, will you please either inform me yourself, whether through writing, text, in person, or find a third party to come to me first. I would rather you do that before going on in line and writing some article about me or reporting me, because usually if that happens, I'm not going to know about it, and I would like to know about it first if that's possible. So please, if something goes wrong or if you decide later something wasn't okay, please find a way. Will you be able to tell me first so we can try to talk about it before you go reporting me? And people are like, yeah, that's fine, that's totally cool. And now I'm trying to remember what the other one was.
Yeah, I can't help you. It's way far away now.
I know, it's super far away. I had another thing to say.
You're gonna remember when you edit the video.
I'm just gonna upload it. That's what I do.
Okay. You don't edit videos then, apparently.
No, I will soon. Anyways. No, there was something else about consensual non-consent. I usually like to ask the person in negotiation, are you able to express that you need to stop? Because not everybody can do that. Some people go nonverbal. Some people might trigger and might have the response where they try to say, yes, it's fine, keep going, it's fine, I'm okay, and they don't want to acknowledge that something's wrong. So make sure you have that discussion with somebody. Are you able to say that you need to actually stop? Some people use safe words. I have mixed feelings about safe words, because I find usually people that actually need a safe word aren't able to.
Even if it's, and people will do like visual safe words because that's easier, but it's not always. I mean, if you're in a situation where you actually need a safe word, are you going to remember that the thing in your hand that you're holding on to, like with an iron fist, is the thing that you need to drop to safe word? Not all the time.
I've played with that kind of safe word before, and I honestly found that it took a lot more effort and commitment. Do you remember this? To drop. You gave me a bracelet because it was a really loud event we were at. This was a million fucking years ago. And just saying something and blurting something out is easier than it was to like be like, okay, if I drop this is over.
Yeah, but you also need to talk to the person and be like, dropping this doesn't mean that it's you've failed or that you're a bad person or even necessarily that the scene needs to end. That just means I'm going to come and check on you. Or like, you know, something like that, because a lot of the times, especially bottoms, will feel like if they safe word, they've failed. Or like,
that's why a lot of people can't. They don't want to disappoint you.
So yeah, especially especially in like at an event where you're trying to like show off a little bit and everybody wants to look good and stuff. So it's hard.
Much mewing. Having people be close up to my neck behind me and growl is just, oh, I can't wait to see you this weekend. And someone said, how do I aftercare my top? That was the other thing I was going to mention. Thank you. That aftercare for tops is very important.
Especially with CNC.
Especially with any kind of CNC, consensual, non-consent. And I have learned as a top, matter of fact, my first lesson was with you. And you were the one when I was like, what's wrong? I'll go over the story a little bit more. I won't go into detail. But I made you do some stuff that you were you were very upset about. You were grumbly and a little whiny about it. Now you're thinking about it.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay.
It was a lot of build-up, and then I denied him, basically. And he had to work. He had to go do teardown for an event. So, like, right after we were finished playing, and he's upset and he's kind of grumbly, he left because he had to go do his thing. And I felt like the biggest piece of garbage.
I don't remember.
It was a West Coast Bound, like, a long time ago.
Okay.
I felt like the biggest piece of garbage. And I started questioning things. I started thinking, oh, I was way too hard on him. That was really mean. And I started getting upset. I started feeling like a bad top. I'm such a horrible person. And I cried, and then I eventually went to sleep. And the next morning I told you about it. I said, you know what? I'm really sorry. I think I was really mean to you, and I feel horrible. And you were like, are you kidding? That was super hot. And I was like, what? I felt like I was so horrible to you. And you were like, yeah, but I loved it. And I said, well, as soon as you left, I started questioning everything and feeling awful. And you said, well, you know what? To be honest, I left right afterwards. And you probably needed some aftercare. And that was my first lesson a million years ago. And I was like, tops need aftercare too. And so I've learned when it comes to playing, especially if it comes down to any kind of like CNC play, I'll tell them, I say, if you need cuddles or not, if you just want to chat, whatever, that's fine. But my aftercare as a top is I need to stick around long enough that you're okay and that you don't hate me. Because if we part ways right away, I'm going to start going over everything and questioning and thinking, oh, that was awful. I was too mean. Maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe that. So I'm like, I just need to stick around long enough to that you don't hate me and that you're okay. That's my aftercare. And it helps a lot. Because then I see that they're kind of happy and smiley and coming down a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, you're in your little sushi blanket ball and you're happy. I'm good.
Yeah, I like cuddles.
He likes cuddles. Not everyone likes to cuddle after.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cuddles are fine, but if you don't like them, that's fine. I could just sit and chat with you afterwards. Whatever you want, I'll get you.
Yeah.
What you need. We can have a smoke together. I don't even care. I just want to know that you're good.
With consensual non-consent, especially though, because you're playing with consent and you're playing with pushing boundaries and basically pushing past someone's consent specifically on purpose, it's really easy to feel like a really awful person when you're the top because you've just done something that they didn't want to do. I mean, they either agreed to do something that they didn't want to do because it would make you happy, or because they wanted to be humiliated, or whatever, or or you both agreed to like role play that they didn't want to do the thing. So finish when you're done with it, you're like, they didn't want to do the thing. So some reassurance, and being made to feel human again when you were basically just the villain for a little while is a really important part of it.
As soon as you said villain, you had me.
Yeah, I know. Drama.
I need more Aftercare as a top than as a bottom for CNC.
Yeah.
That's actually, I can relate.
That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, I can relate. I want to end on a happy note because I know we're talking a ton about like risk and things that can go wrong.
It's super hot though.
It's super hot. That's why I want to share a little story about a scene I did that was involving consensual non-consent, and then we can probably call it a night unless anyone else has any other questions, or if you have anything else you want to share. I know you know this story.
I'm sure.
And this comes to me defending my minivan. I have a minivan, and people are like, oh, the momobile. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I do have kids, and it's a momobile. But stow and go seats and some mats put in the back can be a lot of fun. So I did a consensual non-consent scene that basically it was with a partner. We'd been together for a while. We had already had kind of engaged in certain amounts of CNC play, and she wanted to do like an unexpected kind of rape play scenario. She said, I don't want to know what's going to happen. You already know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we had talked about everything, safe words, whatever. Okay, what's not okay. What is it you want to get out of it? How do you want to feel? And she mostly said she wanted to be scared. And I was like, oh, fun. So, so I made sure that it was a little bit of time had gone by, enough to make her kind of like maybe forget about it a little bit or stop wondering when it was going to be. And we'd gone for dinner, and she was under the impression that I was going to drive her home after that. But instead, and I love this, I'd already put all the seats down in the back of the van and already put mats down all over the van, and she hadn't noticed, which was really amusing. I thought maybe that she might see that and it would scare her, but she didn't even notice. And so after dinner, instead of driving her home, I made sure to drive very slowly. I kind of just drove outside of the city to the middle of nowhere where there's not a lot of lights and just like fields of fucking, I don't know, corn, and just started driving really, really slowly. And after a while, she's looking around and she's like, where are we going? And at this point I committed to not say a word. I didn't respond. I didn't look at her. I just kept looking at the road and I just kept driving really slowly. And she started getting more nervous. Robin, no, seriously, where are we going? Nothing, just kept driving. And she was increasingly getting more and more nervous. And I kind of started panicking a little bit. Where are we going? Where are we right now? What are you doing? And I just, straight-faced, just kept driving without saying anything. And eventually we ended up in the middle of a field where I wanted there to be no light. Like no light posts. Lampposts, whatever, nothing. Streetlights. I wanted it to be dark. We were in the middle of a field. And very slowly and quietly, again, I'm not looking at her, I'm not saying a word. I just got out of the van, closed the door, and I went around to the other side to her door. And here's a really good example of some form of consent and non-consent. I got her onto her door, and she'd locked the doors. And I just stood outside her door right in front of her, looking through the window like this. And she went like this. And then she unlocked the doors. Which was her way of being like, okay, yeah, come on in. And I grabbed her and I pulled her in the back of the van, and we had a very cool consensual non-consent scene. And, she was like terrified the whole time. We had so much fun. But like after that, on the way home, she was nothing but like grinning ear to ear as I drove her home. She'd clearly had an amazing time, and she said it was a fantasy she'd always wanted. So there's a good example of like a happy consensual non-consent scene that was really fun for the both of us. nothing negative to talk about afterwards. It was nothing but positive. We had so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share any last thoughts? I think somebody else wrote something.
No.
I guess I'm curious if CNC is more conductive in evoking trauma, but if that can have a happy ending too.
There are a lot of people that do kink as part of their therapy, and rape play and CNC stuff is one way that a lot of trauma survivors deal with that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to point out, kink is not therapy. Get your own therapy. Doing kinky stuff and CNC stuff is great, and that can absolutely be helpful and affirming and give you power back and do all of the things that you needed to do if that's what you need to do. But it is not in itself therapy. Get therapy.
Yeah, that's the saying that's often said, kink can be therapeutic.
It is not therapy.
It's not therapy.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's really common. A lot of people say, a lot of psychologists would say that I am reliving some of my trauma, but in a way that I can control, which helps me feel better about it. That's seriously not uncommon. Please don't mistake that for that's what kink is. You had an abnormally normal childhood, and you're still kinky as fuck. I suffered from trauma. I'm kinky. There's no more people, at least according to many studies so far. There isn't more people that have suffered abuse or trauma in the kink scene. They're just more likely to be open about it.
Yeah.
That's what studies are showing right now. But that's a thing. And just make sure to really be careful, because that's your tiptoeing around a lot of landmines if you're playing with trauma. I highly recommend seeing Xanthine's Ordeals class. That is something that Xanthine, if you ever see them present, they're very experienced in that area and actually does scenes for people to help them overcome certain things. Xanthine is really good for that.
I had a thought. I'm having trouble holding onto it.
It's one of those days.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's more things I'm going to read. Much mewing. That sounds super scary, but could be fun in a safe environment. I assume you're talking about the kind of rape play scene in the van. It was so much fun. That was something we talked about for a long time. And one day I was like, I'm just going to do it. No turning back now. Do you remember what it was you wanted to say?
It had to do with like therapy and stuff, though. I can't remember now.
About trauma.
Yeah. Trauma and therapy.
Trauma and therapy. Reliving your trauma in a way that you're in control.
Yeah. It's that, but I'm having trouble bringing my brain to it.
I guess one of those days. We've both been kind of goofy, mostly him. Usually I'm the goofy one, but he's been pretty goofy today.
Yeah. It's an important thought, and I'm trying to...
Before we go, because it's time to go. Get your thought back. I'll wait, because I'm here for the booze. Halloween will never be over.
Halloween will never be over.
It's my favorite.
Shit.
We're gonna stop the video and you're gonna remember what it was.
It's on the tip of my tongue. I know it's there. It's trauma and reliving it and...
In Ordeals, like with Xanthine?
No, not... It was before that.
Okay.
Trying to... it's an important thought about reliving traumas in a way that's healthy and accepting that these are maybe part of you. It's not... it was denying that that's part of you or that you want to do those things is kind of a thought was that it's kind of giving that to your abuser, because if you're like specifically avoiding them because you think that's part of reliving your abuse and stuff like that and you're avoiding it, but it's something that you want and that you're craving, own that thing instead of giving it to your abuser was the thought.
That's nice.
Because Because, I mean, maybe that is why that's part of you. But it's part of you now. And if you make it yours, instead of pretending that it's something that's part of them but it's something that's eating at you. Mm-hmm. Like, if you instead take it and make it part of you and take off the sharp edges and do the work to work through some of that trauma and go to therapy, and maybe you can make that part of some of your scenes and make it part of you being a whole person instead of having this trauma that you're trying to avoid, can be a good way to go forward.
Liberating, I think. Liberating is probably a good word.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It actually makes me think of, I grew up, I had some domestic violence a lot of my childhood, and when I was in my teens and I started having these fantasies about a lot of consensual, non-consent kind of fantasies and rape fantasies, violent fantasies, I remember thinking and just like really struggling with it and being like, am I wanting this because of my experience with domestic violence and abuse? Mm-hmm. And I really struggled with it. Also with, wanting to be with women. Is it because of the domestic violence I experienced? And I really struggled with that a lot. And I eventually came to two kind of conclusions. And that was, the major one was, I'm never, ever going to know whether or not that's the reason. It could just be that's what I'm into. Or it could be related to my trauma. I will never definitively know the answer to that. So like I needed to stop asking myself that question and stop torturing myself over it because I was never going to know. And then the other thing was like, okay, so what should I do about it? Instead of just questioning it and torturing myself, this is the situation, this is what I like, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to try to shove it away or embrace it? And I chose to embrace it. And it was one of the best decisions I've made. I think one of the healthiest decisions I've made.
Yeah, anytime you can take a part of you and incorporate it into yourself and make it accepting yourself for who you are and working to be a better person is what we should be doing. Any kind of shame in who you are is something that someone else put there. Mm-hmm. And that you need to try and, like, that shame is not helpful. Shame is almost never a good emotion.
Mm-hmm. Guilt is about feeling bad over something you did wrong. Mm-hmm. Shame is about feeling like you are a bad person.
Yeah. And there's a lot of shame involved in all of the different kinks and stuff like that, especially CNC. If you're looking for, like, okay. Like...
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting because we're getting off topic.
No, we're not.
Or you would just mention CNC. I was going to say shame.
I was bringing the shame thing
back to CNC. I know, you were tying it all back and I interrupted you.
In the middle of it.
Okay, finish it.
Okay.
Finish it.
Shame and stuff like that, especially with CNC, is really, really common, and working through that and I see you totally messed up my whole train of thought. I have no idea what I was going to say now.
In terms of CNC. I know, I'm sorry. I got excited. I was going to say we should talk about shame next week. That should be our topic, with shame, because we deal with a lot of people with shame.
Okay.
We were talking about shame versus guilt. Mm-hmm. And in CNC, you can play with shame. That's like a lot of humiliation.
That's more humiliation stuff. Usually don't play with shame too much.
I'm not a big fan of playing with shame, to be honest. But
there's a lot of shame involved in wanting CNC, especially. I mean, from both sides, like wanting to do rape play, wanting to be raped, like a woman wanting to be raped. Like there's all sorts of cultural stuff that tells you that that's not okay, and obviously being actually raped is outside of most people's desire.
Yes. The people that have rape fantasies are not people that want to be raped.
Yeah.
Actual rape is not the same thing as a rape fantasy.
Yeah. And it's important to distinguish those two things, but it's also, it's something that you have to work through and talk about if you're going to do this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talk it out. Before and after. Mm-hmm. Make sure you talk about it afterwards. Not right after the scene.
No, like 2 days later.
A day or two later when you've had time to kind of come down from everything.
Usually 2 days later.
Even the day after, you could be really droppy. But
the day after, the day after that. I mean, anytime within like usually 3 days is the most.
Yeah, 2-3 days.
2 or 3 days is when people are going to drop pretty hard from something like that. Like I did a rape play scene where the person was elated afterwards, and the next day they just had the best day ever, and then they crashed so hard after that, and they didn't tell me, and that's rough, but that's beside the point.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, they had a really hard time of it because they crashed really hard. I mean, they really enjoyed what we did, but because of the emotions and the physicality of
and
it,
everything, just like when you take uppers.
The crash was really hard, and they weren't quite prepared for it. So
yeah, your chemicals are rebalancing, and they crash, and it can cause a lot of overwhelming feelings.
Yeah, CNC, especially the first couple times you do it, are going to be very intense scenes. So you need to make sure that you have aftercare lined up, and if you don't want to go to the top in the scene to talk about what happened, if you're crashing, if you have friends that you can talk to that can help you, that can, I don't know, hug you.
Ideally, resources that can relate.
Yeah,
FetLife is pretty good for that. If you meet people, like if you're a bottom, talk to other bottoms. If you're a top, talk to other tops. Really important to have those resources.
Yeah,
and you can always message me.
Yeah, you need to be aware that something as intense as that is going to probably cause significant drop afterwards. So you're gonna have a day or two where the world is awful and everything is awful,
and you might just need some reassurance from a friend.
And you need some reassurance and some hugs and maybe some hot chocolate or something. I don't know, whatever you need. But chocolate is
and
good.
Horror movies.
But it's like 8:30 now.
I know, we went like way over. Usually we only do half an hour. This was an hour because it is a really complex
I'm supposed to be doing other things.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Good night.
I'm gonna just
say good night, Brandon.
Hey.
I'm going now. I want to talk about shame next week. Another big topic, but I'll figure out a way to figure it out. So thanks so much for joining me. Mwah, mwah. I appreciate it. Thank you. Please message me if you have any questions. Please message me if you have an idea for another topic on Hump Day Q&A, or if you have a question you want me to address for Hump Day Q&A, all of that jazz. And yeah, take care. I've got another comment I saw. Compulsively was very good. Thank you both. Yes, thank you. Mwah. Enjoy the rest of your night. I know I will. And yeah, take care of each other. And we'll see you later. Mwah. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'm turning this off now.